I never thought my own family would toss me aside like yesterday's trash, but that's exactly what happened 10 years ago. The memory is still fresh, like an unhealed wound that occasionally throbs to remind me it's there. My name is Erica, and I'm 30 now. Back then, I was just a bright-eyed 20-year-old in my second year of college, still living at home to save money. I had parents who I thought loved me and an older brother named Mark who I believed cared about me. Boy, was I wrong. That weekend started like any other. My college friends and I had planned a quick trip to the neighboring state, nothing wild, just some much-needed R&R after midterms. I remember laughing with Sarah and Jessica as we drove back, sharing stories and making plans for the next semester. I was happy, relaxed, and completely unprepared for what waited for me at home. When I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. The garage door was open, and I could see boxes stacked inside. At first, I thought maybe Dad was finally cleaning out the garage like he'd been promising to do for years. "Mom, Dad, I'm back," I called out as I walked through the front door, dropping my overnight bag on the floor. Mom appeared from the kitchen, and the look on her face wasn't warm or welcoming. Dad was sitting at the dining table, pretending to read the newspaper. "What's with all the boxes in the garage?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Those are your things," Mom said flatly. I laughed, thinking it was some kind of weird joke. "What? Are you guys renovating or something? You could have warned me, and I would have helped pack my stuff." "It's not a renovation, Erica," Mom's voice was cold as ice. "We packed your things because you need to leave, today." I stood there, literally feeling like someone had punched me in the gut. "What are you talking about?" Dad still wouldn't look at me, just rustled his newspaper like it was the most interesting thing in the world. "Your brother Mark brought his girlfriend home yesterday," Mom continued. "She's pregnant, and they're going to live here now. We're turning your room into a nursery. And there's something else you should know. We won't be paying for your college anymore either. We need that money for Mark's family and the baby." My legs felt weak. I had to grab the wall to steady myself. "You can't be serious. I'm in the middle of the semester, what am I supposed to do?" Dad finally spoke up, still not meeting my eyes. "You're an adult, Erica, figure it out." I looked from Mom to Dad, searching for any sign of the parents I thought I knew. There was nothing. Just two strangers who had made their decision. My brother Mark wasn't even there to face me. I went to my room, or what used to be my room, and found it already half-transformed. My posters were down, my bedding stripped. The only thing left was a bare mattress and the boxes they hadn't moved out yet. I called my best friend first, hoping she could let me crash on her couch, but she lived in a tiny dorm room. Then I tried my other friends, but no one had space. Eventually, I called the one person I knew would never turn me away, Grandma. "Of course you can stay with me, sweetie," she said when I explained what happened, her voice filled with shock and concern. "But what about your education?" I broke down crying then, sitting on my stripped bed, surrounded by the boxes containing my life. "They said they won't pay for it anymore." "I don't know what to do, Grandma." "Don't you worry about that now," she said firmly, "just come over. We'll figure something out." I packed what I could into my beat-up Toyota, mostly clothes, my laptop, and a few precious photo albums. Looking at those family photos made me feel sick now. I left behind furniture and larger items, promising myself I'd come back for them when I had a place. Grandma was waiting on her porch when I arrived. She held me while I cried, stroking my hair like she did when I was little. When I finally calmed down, we sat at her kitchen table with cups of tea, and I told her everything. "I have some savings," she said after listening to me. "Not much, about $20,000. But it's yours if you need it for school. I won't have my granddaughter dropping out because her parents lost their minds." That night, lying on Grandma's pull-out couch, I made myself a promise: I would finish college, build a good life, and never, ever depend on my parents again. The next morning, I called my college roommate Sarah and asked if she and our friend Jessica would be interested in getting an apartment together. It would be cheaper for all of us than the dorms. Within a week, we had found a small 3-bedroom apartment we could afford if we all worked part-time jobs. It wasn't fancy, the carpet was worn, the appliances ancient, but it was ours. Grandma's money covered most of my tuition, thanks to the partial scholarship I already had. For everything else, rent, books, food, I got a job waiting tables at a restaurant near campus. Later, I picked up a second job doing data entry on weekends. The next 3 years were a blur of textbooks, coffee, and double shifts. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. to study before my morning classes, then rush to the restaurant for the lunch shift, back to campus for afternoon classes, and often work until closing. Weekends were for my data entry job and catching up on assignments. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My roommates Sarah and Jessica were lifesavers. They'd leave food in the fridge when I worked late, and sometimes they'd quiz me on course material while I got ready for work. Our apartment became the one place I felt safe, even when the heating broke down in winter or the neighbors' music kept us up all night. But giving up wasn't an option. Not when I pictured my parents' faces, so convinced I couldn't make it on my own. I never contacted them, but news still reached me through Grandma. She'd call once a week, and after checking how I was doing, she'd hesitantly share family updates. Mark got married last month, she told me during my 3rd year of college, a small ceremony. Your parents went all out, though. The next update came a few months later. Your brother and his father-in-law started a trading company. Electronics components, I think. Your mother won't stop talking about it at family gatherings. I could picture my mom, gushing about her golden child to anyone who would listen. According to Grandma, Mom would corner relatives at every family party to brag about how Mark's business was thriving and how they'd all be rich soon. They took out a second mortgage on the house to invest in his company, Grandma said, concern evident in her voice. A pretty big loan, from what I hear. That's their problem, I replied, though part of me worried about Grandma's retirement funds being tied up in that house. Meanwhile, I kept grinding. The summer before my senior year, I landed an internship at a marketing firm. The pay was minimal, but it meant I could drop the data entry job and finally catch my breath. My grades, which had slipped a bit from my constant exhaustion, started to recover. I even made the dean's list my final semester, something I'm still proud of today. Graduation day was surreal. I sat among my peers in my cap and gown, scanning the audience. Grandma was there, beaming with pride. So were Sarah's and Jessica's families. Everyone was here except my parents and brother. After the ceremony, Grandma hugged me tight. I am so proud of you, Erica, so proud. Her words meant everything. She handed me an envelope containing a check, not much, but enough to help with my first month's rent at my new place. With my degree in business administration, I landed an entry-level job at a mid-sized company. The pay wasn't great, but it was stable. I found a tiny studio apartment that I could just afford if I budgeted carefully. Over the next few years, I worked my ass off. I took on extra projects, volunteered for weekend work, and made myself indispensable. Each promotion meant a little more breathing room financially. I started putting aside money, first for emergencies, then for my dream of owning a home. Life fell into a rhythm: work, save, occasional nights out with friends, weekly calls with Grandma. I dated here and there, but nothing serious. Trust issues, my therapist said, from the family abandonment. I couldn't argue with that. When I turned 29, Grandma called with news that made me laugh out loud. Your brother made quite a mess, she said. He went behind his father-in-law's back and made a deal with some supplier in Asia. Paid everything up front for cheaper components. Let me guess, I said, the supplier disappeared with the money? Exactly, the business is nearly bankrupt. His father-in-law lost a fortune and isn't speaking to him anymore. I couldn't help feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. What about his wife? She's standing by him, surprisingly. Had a huge fight with her parents over it. As Grandma continued updating me on the family drama, I realized how detached I felt from it all. Like I was hearing about characters in a TV show rather than my own family. By that point, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest house. Nothing fancy, an older 4-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood that needed serious work, but it would be mine. The day I signed the papers, I felt a rush of pride so intense it brought tears to my eyes. I had done this, me, the daughter they threw away. The house was a fixer-upper, to put it kindly. Peeling wallpaper, creaky floors, a kitchen straight out of the 70s. But it had good bones and plenty of space. Grandma came to see it and immediately wrote me another check. For repairs, she insisted, "You deserve this, Erica." I tried to refuse, but she wouldn't hear it. "I'm old, let me help my granddaughter while I still can." With her help and a lot of YouTube tutorials, I tackled the renovations myself. I learned to tile a bathroom, refinish hardwood floors, and install kitchen cabinets. Each completed project felt like another middle finger to my family who thought I couldn't make it on my own. A year later, the house was transformed. The walls were freshly painted, the kitchen modernized, the backyard landscaped. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, earned through my own blood, sweat, and tears. To celebrate, I decided to throw a housewarming party. I invited friends from work, college buddies like Sarah and Jessica, Grandma, and a few relatives who had stayed in touch over the years. The party was in full swing when the doorbell rang. I opened it, wineglass in hand, expecting a late-arriving friend. Instead, I found myself face to face with my parents, my brother Mark, his wife, and their 2 children, a 9-year-old I'd never met and a toddler in Mark's arms. "Erica," my mother exclaimed, throwing her arms wide as if the last 10 years had never happened. "We've missed you so much, we're all so proud of what you've accomplished." I stood frozen in my doorway, wine sloshing in my glass as I stared at the family who'd thrown me away a decade ago. My mother's arms were still outstretched, her smile wide but her eyes calculating. "Aren't you going to invite us in?" she asked, loud enough for my guests to hear. "It's been so long." I stepped aside mechanically, my brain still trying to process what was happening. They filed past me, Dad looking uncomfortable, Mark avoiding my eyes, his wife offering a nervous smile. Mom immediately took center stage, grabbing my arm and pulling me into the living room where my friends and Grandma were gathered. "Everyone," she announced, "I'm Erica's mother. We're so happy to finally see our daughter's beautiful home." Then she turned to me, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Honey, why did you leave us? Why haven't you spoken to us in all these years?" The room went quiet. My friends knew bits and pieces of my story, but most didn't know the full extent. Grandma's face darkened, and she started to stand up, probably to intervene, but I gave her a small shake of my head. "Let's not do this now," I said quietly to my mother, "this is a party." "Of course, sweetheart," she replied with fake sweetness. "We're just so happy to be included." I wasn't going to make a scene in front of my guests, so I plastered on a smile and moved through the party, introducing my family to everyone. All while noticing how Mom, Dad, and Mark kept looking around my house, whispering to each other, examining everything from my furniture to the crown molding I'd installed myself. The party limped along for another 2 hours. Finally, the last guest left, except for my family. Grandma was the last to go, pulling me into a tight hug. I called her a taxi, then closed the front door and turned to face my unwanted house guests who had made themselves comfortable in my living room. "What are you doing here?" I asked bluntly. "After 10 years of nothing, you show up unannounced at my party?" Mom's sugary smile vanished instantly. "Well, that's not very welcoming." "I'm not feeling particularly welcoming," I replied. "How did you even know about the party?" "Cousin Rita mentioned it," Dad said. "We've been wanting to reconnect." "Cut the crap," I said. "What do you want?" They exchanged glances. Mark's wife took the kids upstairs, presumably to explore more of my house, which irritated me even more. "We've had some difficulties," Mom finally admitted. "Business problems," Mark added, speaking to me directly for the first time. "Things haven't gone well." "I heard, Grandma keeps me updated." "It's just not fair," Mark said, his voice taking on a whiny tone I remembered from childhood. "You've got this big house all to yourself, while we're about to lose everything." And there it was, the real reason for their sudden appearance in my life. So that's it? You think I should bail you out? After you threw me out of the house and cut me off? That was different, Dad protested. You were young, you could manage. And you're not young, you can't manage, I shot back. You're all adults with jobs, retirement savings, whatever, figure it out. Mom's face hardened. The bank is taking our house. We'll have nowhere to go. Rent an apartment, that's what I had to do. With 2 young children, Mark gestured toward the stairs where his wife had disappeared with the kids. Be reasonable, Erica. Reasonable? I laughed bitterly. Like you were reasonable when you moved your pregnant girlfriend into my room without warning? When you let Mom and Dad cut off my college funding? We're family, Mom insisted. This house has plenty of space, 4 bedrooms. You could easily take us in. I looked around at my house that I had worked for, saved for, renovated with my own hands. The house that represented everything I'd accomplished despite them, not because of them. No, I said firmly. You're not moving in here, not now, not ever. But the children, Mom started. Mark has in-laws, I cut her off, go ask them for help. Mark's face darkened, they're not speaking to us since the business went under. Not my problem, I replied. I want you all to leave, now. You can't be serious, Dad said, we're about to be homeless. I'm dead serious, get out of my house before I call the police. They looked shocked, as if they truly couldn't believe I wouldn't roll over and give them everything they wanted. After several tense moments, they reluctantly gathered themselves up and moved toward the door. I followed to make sure they actually left. Mom turned at the door, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. This isn't over, you'll see reason eventually. Don't count on it, I replied, closing the door firmly behind them. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the way they'd looked around my house, how they'd already decided which bedrooms they'd take, how they saw my hard-earned home as the solution to their problems. The next morning, the text started. First from Mom, we're sorry for surprising you like that, let's talk when you've calmed down. Then from Dad, your mother is very upset, you should call her. By afternoon, it was Mark, the bank sent the final eviction notice, we have 2 weeks, please reconsider. I ignored them all, but they kept coming. Photos of the eviction notice, pictures of Mark's kids looking sad. Tearful voice messages from my mother about family responsibility and how I was their only hope. When I blocked their numbers, they started calling and texting from others. One night, my phone rang from an unknown number. Why won't you answer our calls? Mom demanded when I picked up. Because I have nothing to say to you, don't contact me again. We're coming to stay with you next week, she said as if I hadn't spoken. Once you see the children, you won't be able to turn us away. Watch me, I said coldly. I won't let you in, don't waste the trip. I hung up, then called Grandma, who confessed that my parents had been pressuring her to convince me to take them in. I told them I support whatever decision you make, she assured me, and I do, Erica. They made their choice 10 years ago. A few days later, my neighbor stopped by. Hey, just wanted to let you know there was a guy walking around your property yesterday, looking in windows. Thought you should know. A chill ran down my spine, what did he look like? The description matched Mark perfectly. The next day, I installed security cameras around my property. It wasn't cheap, but the peace of mind was worth every penny. Within a week, the system proved its value when I received an alert on my phone while at work. I opened the app to see Mark and his wife walking around my backyard, pointing at windows and discussing something. I texted Grandma immediately, Mark's at my house again, casing it like a burglar. She called back right away, the bank took their house, Erica. They have 2 weeks to vacate. I thought you should know, be prepared. That Saturday morning, I woke up early and made coffee. I was on edge, half expecting them to arrive any minute. Around 8 a.m., my security system alerted me to movement in the driveway. I checked the cameras to see 2 cars pulling up, my parents in one, Mark's family in the other. The trunks and back seats were packed with belongings. My heart raced as I watched them unload boxes and suitcases, piling them near my front door. Mom took charge, directing everyone like a general commanding troops. The doorbell rang, followed by aggressive knocking. I didn't answer. "Erica, we know you're in there," Mom called out, "open up." I remained silent, watching them through the security feed. After about 15 minutes of continuous knocking and calling, I finally approached the door but only opened it with the chain still on. "What do you want?" I asked, though I knew perfectly well. "Let us in, Erica," Mom said. "We're here to stay with you now. We brought our things." "I already told you no, go away." Mark's wife started crying on cue, and the toddler, picking up on her distress, began wailing too. The 9-year-old just looked embarrassed. "Look what you're doing to the children," Mom hissed. "How can you be so cruel?" "I'm not being cruel, I'm enforcing boundaries. You can't just show up at someone's house and expect to move in." Dad stepped forward. "Erica, be reasonable, we have nowhere else to go." "That's not true, and you know it. You have options, you just want the free one." My security system pinged again. I glanced at my phone and saw Mark on the camera feed, sneaking around to my back door. I heard a scraping sound. He was trying to jimmy the lock. I slammed the front door shut, locked it, and called 911. "There's someone trying to break into my house," I told the dispatcher. I could hear Mark's frustrated grunts from the back of the house, then the sound of something cracking. He was putting his shoulder into it now. My parents and sister-in-law couldn't see what Mark was doing, but they must have known. They stayed at the front door, knocking and calling my name to create a distraction. The police arrived within minutes. Mark quickly abandoned his break-in attempt when he heard the sirens, rushing back to join his family at the front of the house. I opened the door for the officers and quickly explained the situation. Then I showed them the security footage of Mark trying to force my back door open. "They're trespassing," I told the officers, "and he was trying to break in." "We weren't breaking in," Mom protested. "We're family. We're just trying to move in with my daughter who has this big house all to herself." "Did she invite you to live here?" one officer asked. "Well, no, but..." "Then you're trespassing," he said firmly. "And attempting to enter someone's home without permission is breaking and entering, family or not." "This is ridiculous," Dad exclaimed. "We're homeless. She has 4 bedrooms. What kind of person turns away family?" The officer turned to me. "Do you want to press charges?" I looked at my family, the people who had thrown me out without a second thought 10 years ago. Part of me wanted to say yes, to let them face consequences for once in their lives. But another part just wanted this to be over. "No," I said finally, "I just want them to leave and not come back." The officers issued them a stern warning about trespassing and told them they had to leave immediately. My family retreated to their cars, shooting daggers at me with their eyes. The next day, Mom took her campaign online. She posted a tearful story on social media about her heartless daughter who lived alone in a 4-bedroom house but wouldn't take in her homeless family with young children. She made sure to tag relatives and mutual acquaintances so everyone would see it. The calls and messages started pouring in again, distant aunts, cousins, even old family friends, all telling me I should be ashamed of myself. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I muted social media. I focused on work, on my home, on the friends and family who had actually been there for me. Grandma called a few months later with an update. "They found an apartment," she said. "And Mark got a job at some warehouse. Not what he was used to, but it's steady work." "Good for them," I replied, meaning it. I didn't wish them ill, I just didn't want them in my life. "Your mother sent me a message to pass along," Grandma continued hesitantly. "She says she wants to meet with you. To apologize and discuss everything." I laughed humorlessly. "Let me guess, they need money for rent?" "Probably," Grandma sighed. "What should I tell her?" "Tell her I'm not interested. Tell her if they contact me again, I'll get a restraining order." And that was that. I haven't spoken to any of them since. It's been almost a year now, and my life is peaceful again. I'm still working at the same company, got another promotion recently. My house feels like a sanctuary again, not a target. Grandma comes over for dinner every Sunday. I still see the friends who stuck by me through everything. I've even started dating someone who seems to understand my trust issues and doesn't push too hard. Sometimes people ask me if I miss having a relationship with my parents and brother. The truth is, I miss the relationship I thought we had, the one that existed before I realized how conditional their love was. But I don't miss them, not the real them, the ones who threw me away when I was inconvenient and tried to use me when it suited them.